Rankings. You know it, I know it. We love to see things ranked and discuss them civilly in the comments. With Rift Apart coming out, on the day this video should be released, I really wanted to look back at the mainline games in the Ratchet timeline and talk about why I loved each one of them. I first played all these games in the year they were released, and then again recently for my Ratchet & Clank videos on this channel. Check them out if you haven't already. So firstly, I want to give you the rankings for these games that I did as a kid, and then as I go through them as an adult, from my least best to my favourite, discuss kind of why I've put them there, why they might have changed from my ranking as a kid, and what I love about the games. Before I begin, I really just want to say that after playing through all of these games again, I really think any of them could be number one. Like, all of them have their own strengths and weaknesses, and I think anyone could love any of these games just as much for any of these reasons. So here are my rankings as a kid from least best to best. Number 9, Ratchet & Clank 2016. Number 8, Ratchet Deadlocked. Number 7, Ratchet & Clank Nexus. Number 6, Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction. Number 5, Ratchet & Clank A Crack in Time. Number 4, Ratchet & Clank 1. Number 3, Ratchet & Clank 3, Up Your Arsenal. Number 2, Ratchet & Clank Quest for Booty. And my all-time favourite as a kid, Ratchet & Clank 2, Going Commando. Okay, now for my rankings after playing through the entire series again as an adult. I'll start with the lowest and explain why. This hasn't changed, more than likely because the first time I played this was in 2016, which is not as much time has passed since the other games in the series. Now 2016 is not bad. I actually really enjoyed this game, and I think it would actually rank a lot higher if it was my first Ratchet & Clank game. The reason why it's ranked at the bottom for me is that it tries to remake the first game, but does it kind of worse. They missed out entire levels from the first game. They cut lots of puzzles. I remember the Quirk level where you're having to run Quirk's Gauntlet, and you get the water tool where you can drain water and put water in to raise and lower, the water levels, and it gives you these puzzles, and I really remember that level because I really, really enjoyed that level as a kid. But they took out that level from the new Ratchet & Clank 2016 game, which really bothers me. Bosses were also downgraded. I remember the first boss in that game, the one where Quark drops you down the hole and sets this creature on you. You have to damage it to get its health down a segment, and then it gets like and then it gets a shield around it, which makes it invincible, and you have to lead it over the bridge to make it fall in the lava, drop in the shield so that you can do damage to it again. And again, Drek, the final boss of the game, which I'll get into more later, I think was probably Ratchet & Clank's best boss in the whole series. But again, he's replaced with somewhat of a bullet sponge in this new game. But overall, I really like them bring back the weapons. I thought the story was solid, though it could have done with some more cutscenes that weren't just entirely from the movie to flesh out the game a bit more. It was a solid, enjoyable game, but I think the idea of trying to reboot the original and having in levels with basically old Ratchet & Clank level design may have hurt it more than the nostalgia that they were going for doing good for the game. Overall, though, it was a solid experience. Really enjoyed the game, but it's still number 9. This is another game that hasn't changed from its original place when I played it through. I think this is mainly due to the lack of puzzles in this game and lack of story, where it just has a much greater focus on action and shooting. And I did play this both co-op and single player as a kid, and I thoroughly enjoyed it both times. But it's still, for the aforementioned reasons, one of my lesser favourite Ratchet & Clank games, which is why it's still placed here at number 8. Ratchet & Clank 1 has dropped quite a bit from my list as a kid. I think it was a brilliant game, and I think this just really goes to show just how much improvement Insomniac has made on the Ratchet & Clank games since they first started coming out. But the original was still really solid, introducing the array of weapons we get to see time and time again in later games, and just having a solid mix of gameplay, shooting and platforming. And I think what Ratchet 1 does better than any other game is its bosses. I mentioned this a little before in the 2016 version, but having bosses that aren't just bullet sponges, having bosses that require you to get it down a health segment and then it changes and does something different. So, for example, leading it into the lava. Drek in particular, I think, is the best boss in the entire series, which really tests the player in everything they've learned during the game. During that boss battle, you have to do platforming, you have the option to do grind rail sections, you have to literally unload every bit of ammo you have into him with all of your guns. And then right at the end, to top it all off, you have to slam down on that button to set, set off the missile and destroy him. It was great. It was by far the best boss, and I really hate how in the remake they made it into just a bullet sponge. You even get to use Giant Clank to fight him at the beginning of that boss battle. Literally everything you collect, every weapon, everything you do during the game is tested during this boss battle, and that's how it should be. Even now I wonder if I should have put this game ranked higher up, but I think that just shows you how close these games are for me in terms of where I'm ranking them. This could have been number one. I feel like this should have been number one on my list. You can fly around the galaxy now. You have hover boots. And the story. This game has the best narrative out of any of the Ratchet Clank games. And that really shows, because they spent 3 games, really kind of one bit games, building up to this point. Including taking in everything we already know from all the previous Ratchet Clank games on the PS2. Alistair is one of my favourite characters in the entire series, and he's only in it for this one game. I just love how conflicted he feels in this game, how he was the reason why the Lombaxes had to run away to another dimension, and feels like he needs to atone for his mistakes, and just what that leads him to in this game. And how all of this affects Ratchet, who basically was missing Clank at this point and had no one. However, the reason why it's here is just the fact that it doesn't have as much traditional Ratchet gameplay as the other games. I really think if this game had had 2 more planets in each of the galaxy hubs that you had, it would probably be number 1 on this list. I just felt that for every hour of Ratchet gameplay you get, there is an hour of flying around the galaxy, the galaxy hub, doing side quests, landing on the small planets, which I actually did like, and doing the Clank sections, which were really, really long in this game. And I actually thought they were some of the best Clank sections, but they just were really, really, really long. I kept wanting more Ratchet gameplay, but they kept giving me more side quests and other things to do, which I didn't want to do. And I wouldn't have minded doing all of those, but I really felt like we just needed more Ratchet gameplay, more traditional Ratchet levels, and that was what this game was sorely missing, and that is why it is ranked at number 6. But I think had this game had 2 more planets in each of its galaxy hubs, it would have easily been my favourite game in the series and ranked number 1. This was my favourite as a kid, and I think that's for a couple of reasons. One was the fact that this game makes so many improvements upon the original. Just, you can tell that from that first set piece level. Just, the guns feel better. The story is kind of, a bit more well developed, I guess. The worlds that you go to actually kind of fit into the story as well. Just better than they did in the first one. The guns level up now, which is amazing. But I think one of the big things as well is, as a kid, I really enjoyed plot twists. And the plot twist at the end of this game with Quirk just made it all that more memorable for me. In fact, I enjoyed this game so much as a kid that I actually managed to get all of the skill points in the game. And this is before I had internet. So why so much lower now compared to when I was a kid? Well, I think it's because the improvements to the game don't stick out as much anymore. These improvements have been, again, improved upon in later games. We've just seen the games get better and better and better and better. So the things that made this game really, really stick out when I first played it as a kid don't quite stick out as much anymore. I still love the quirk twist at the end every time I see it, and I still love replaying this game every time just for that quirk twist. But I think the main reason it is down at number 5 are the desert level and the snow level. There are 2 levels in this game where you have to collect a bunch of crystals. And there's a ton of them. You don't actually need to collect all of them. I think you probably need to collect something like 20 out of the 100 of the crystals. But I'm a completionist, and I want to collect them all every time I play the game, and it just becomes a real, tedious thing. It got to the point where I really found myself not looking forward to doing those levels because of it. And the snow level, are those Yetis supposed to have that much health? And I think that is the main reason why this is lowered so much from my original list, I just don't like those open world levels as much anymore. I think we've had, in recent years, or in the last like probably 10 years, we've had so many open world games that the novelty of those levels have just kind of worn off a bit now. But still, Ratchet Clank 2 Going Commando is still an amazing game. Still one of my favourite games of all time. Oh my god, I just love playing this game through. I could just keep on playing this game through again and again and again. This entry may actually be tied with number 2. This game introduces Dr. Nefarious, and I feel has a better story compared to the previous games. Weapons now level up to level 5. We have a dedicated gauntlet world with actual gauntlet stages, not just like a battle arena. We have your blasters run hot, which I think was actually just a really, really nicely done minigame, and a really, really enjoyable one. Honestly, the only negative I can really say about this game are the vehicles, and maybe how some of the ranger sections you have to go through the multiplayer levels rather than having their own kind of, their own single player levels. But I loved how this game again introduced more like really interesting and cool characters. Again, I feel like I don't have too much to say about this one. I think it just did an amazing job, like Ratchet Clank 2. Nefarious has probably become my favourite villain in the entire Ratchet Clank series. It's just overall an absolutely fantastic game. We get to see more development to Quark's character, which I think was really, really cool. It kind of closes off Quark's arc in this game. And he's still a fantastic character all the way through. Incredibly flawed, but fantastic to watch character. Yeah, this game was great. I have no real negatives to say about it. I think Insomniac just knocked it out the park with this game. The only reason I'd say it's at number 4 is I like the other ones more. Another game that had a twist ending, which is one of the reasons why I ranked it so highly as a kid. What I love about this game, perhaps more than any of the others, or at least more than all but one of the others, is its level design. Unlike the planet hopping of the previous games, this game's whole world is basically interconnected. At least that's how it feels. When you start the game, Ratchet doesn't have a weapon, and you have to go and start these turbines up by doing this platforming, and you can go to them in any order you want to go to, tackle any of these platforming challenges in any order you want to tackle them. And I think it was that freedom at the beginning that I really, really enjoyed, at least this time around. Not to mention that the actual levels don't feel like levels. They feel like they're actually there in the world. When you get dropped down to that cave, it feels like it's an actual cave and not just a level with cave wallpaper. At the beginning, you feel like you're in this town, not just a level with town wallpaper. I think the only reason this game isn't higher is because it only takes 2 to 3 hours to complete. I really, really wanted more of it. This really surprised me. This one ranked a lot higher for me as an adult than when I played it as a kid. And I think the main reason is the level design. Like in A Quest for Booty, the levels in this game felt like actual places, not like levels with the wallpaper of somewhere. Going around the ship at the beginning, it felt like an actual ship that had been turned, into this level that they were using the gravity with in interesting ways to make it into a really awesome level. The city you drop down into afterwards feels like you're part of this city. And this is something I think we see in the showcase for the Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, on that demo where you see Ratchet going through Nefarious City. It feels like you're in that city. It's not just a level with city dressing. I was really surprised how much better this game was than I remembered it being. And the only reason I think this game isn't my number 1 is because it only takes about 5 hours to complete. Again, it really, really left me wanting more. This was a real surprise to me after playing through the entire series back to back. But at the end of it all, this was the game I felt I had the most fun with. Compared to the PlayStation 2, the graphics are noticeably improved from the previous game. The story is noticeably improved. And the game is just, it feels so much bigger, it feels so much grander in scale than the previous games. But I believe it was the balance of all things that solidified this game as my favourite in the series. The ship sections were quick and fun. The Clank sections didn't last too long. But most importantly of all, there was variation. Every planet you visit at the beginning of the game seems to have its own gimmick to it. The initial battle through the city at the beginning of the game, followed by the puzzle-like slime factory that you need to go through. And after that, there's a planet where your ship crashes, and to fix a new ship you have to find 6 different pieces, and so the game gives you 6 different paths you have to go to. Not to mention in the slime factory you get little bits of side quests to do along the way. Never did it feel like the game was giving you one path and just telling you to get to the end of that path. And the side quests were done in just the right amount. The open farming sections that we had in Ratchet Clank 2 and the sewer level in Ratchet Clank 3, they're kind of back in this, but in this game it feels like that they took one of these levels, chopped it up into 3, and then separated it throughout the game, so you're only doing like a third of this kind of side questy collectathon at each point throughout the game. I think one of the main philosophies in this game may have just been never let the player be too long from playing as Ratchet. You know, none of the diversions, none of the ship parts, none of the Clank parts separated you from the core gameplay of this game for that long. And just the huge variety in levels just made me want to keep on going and playing. And there are a lot of things that I think the other games do better than this game, but at its core, Ratchet Clank is about the gameplay, and I think this game really shows that and really leans into that, and that is why this game is my new favourite in the series. And now my rankings of the favourites. I'm sure when this video comes out I will be playing Rift Apart, and just judging by what we've seen of it so far, I think it could very well take my #1 spot in my favourites. And I think it's interesting to see how my tastes have changed from a kid to an adult. As I mentioned before, I think all of these rankings are so close. Any one of them could be #1. I'd really like to see what everyone's rankings are down in the comments. So please let me know what your personal rankings would be for all the Ratchet and Clank mainline games. And feel free to include All for One, Full Frontal Assault, anything like that if you want to. Well, if you like this video, please hit that like button and consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you really like this video, please consider checking out the first chapter of my book and giving it an upvote. This has been That's Effing Rich, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, what's up, people? It's Hardy Gears. Are you feeling me, robots? I'm feeling you. I see the future, and what do I see? Robots going crazy across the galaxy.